So what I am sharing with you, and I have done so during the last conference also, is building of India's first digital index, which is responsible digital gaming framework. And such an index actually does not exist anywhere in the world. So the first exercise that we carried out was that we looked at 7 large economies and we looked at what all frameworks they already had, covering gaming and digital gaming and online gaming and so on and so forth. Out of that, we deduplicated and then we created a super list of indicators. Then we realized that most of the regulations do not take into account aspects like mental health, multi-language, which becomes very important in a country like India. Local language support. I mean, you may not be knowing a word of English, but you may be playing rummy in English, and losing a lot of money just because of lost in translation kind of issues. So we came up with SKOCH reporting indicators. These are 74 of them. And after this, what we did was that we organized multi-stakeholder workshops. Mr. Bharatlal had very kindly sent people from Human Rights Commission. We had people from Ministry of External Affairs. We had people from Ministry of INB. We had NIMHANS. We had AIMS. We had Jindal Global University. We had RIS. We had FISME. We had Swadeshi Jagran Manch, so on and so forth, the entire. So these these workshops went over 6 months, and finally we released the framework on 14th of July, 13th July 2024 at the 98th SKOCH Summit. So we are now building this index in 3 parts. One is compliance ratings, for which we have hired a bunch of mystery shoppers. Mystery shoppers in this case are qualified professionals, they're lawyers and they're economists, and they're going to the top gaming apps and they're looking at vis-a-vis the framework that was decided, how compliant who is. And so that's a technical compliance. So when you say that protection of minors, are you compliant with that or not? The second part, which is subjective and opinion based, and therefore the need for professionals to do it, is what is the quality of that compliance, how far have you gone in complying that. So we have done initial ranking of 30 gaming apps, and research on more apps is underway. And what has come out is a discussion paper, which we are now discussing with multiple stakeholders and the industry if there's any tweaking that is required after the results that have come out. At the same time, we have also written to the industry asking for their inputs, what they have to say. So in the part 1, the industry is not involved. In part 2, the industry is involved, where we are saying, let's hear your point of view, what you are trying to do and where you are going. And taking these two into account, we will be creating a responsible gaming index. So this is the methodology that I just described that we are following. These are the 30 apps that we have already studied. And this is the industry-wide compliance view that I have already shared with you this morning. And given the fact that we had released this framework only in July, only in 2 months we find the needle has moved. The results are very encouraging. The industry average on technical compliance vis-a-vis this framework based on 30 app studies is 39%, and the quality of compliance is 20%. Now at the same time, a lot of other developments are happening in the gaming industry. Recently, Directorate General of GST Intelligence has marked it as a high risk industry, and some very large amount of notices have been sent to them. At the same time, if you look at in the Financial Action Task Force globally, India's position has improved. It is amongst the top 5 compliance oriented countries that there are, and they would not be audited that often. So that's the part 2. The part 3, of course, is that how should gaming or something which is digitally native in nature be regulated. So a task force is being formed which is multi-departmental, including the RBI, the ED, the Ministry of INB, Ministry of IT, so on and so forth. So given this, I think the discussion that we are having today becomes extremely important. The first question, of course, is what is money itself in a digital environment? Is money traditional money, or it can also be digital assets, cryptos, points, offline settlements, etc. The second part of this is again that digital by nature opens up various avenues of evasion and laundering. So this could be tax evasion, offshoring, dark web, lack of tracking and tracing, etc. So what are these avenues? Some countries that are more advanced than us, or have been more early adopters of digital gaming than India, what's going on? So our panel is going to look at that. Next point, which is very important, not just from a gaming perspective, but both from ease of doing business and respect for doing business important, is what is the policy certainty on applicable tax rates must be there. So, today there is a discussion that while the industry understood that the tax rate on gaming was 18% and they were depositing 18%, and the GST department was accepting 18% for so many years, suddenly that they get a notice saying that it was actually 28%. Now, just look at the impossibility of implementing that, because the tax has not been collected. So, if you deposit it, what's the size of the industry, what is the impact of the industry? So India has gone down this path many times before. Famously under Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, we had retrospective taxation for Vodafone. Imagine what happened there. Kane Energy case was another case. So in international arbitrations and courts of law, all these things were lost. But at the same time, what was lost also was a lot of self-respect of people, because honest businessmen were painted as tax evaders. So I think that should not be done. And in the same category, notices are today being sent to NGOs, Section 28 companies who are conducting research and who get grants, even from the government. You say the grant also has to pay GST. So the person giving the grant is government, the person taking the tax is the government, and the poor NGO is only the agency in between. So why don't you send yourself a tax notice? So these are the kind of things. So I think while this tax activism in hindsight has to stop, because it is very, very damaging for the country narrative. The next thing we have to look at is what all regulators come into play. As I said, that while you're looking at only the enforcement people, but who protects the interest of the citizen, who looks at mental health, who looks at human rights. So those kind of regulators should also be involved necessarily in such a task force. Then there is this issue of what is the view the states are taking. Tamil Nadu as a state has established an online gaming authority. What is the thinking in other states, what they want to do? Should there be a central regulation? Should it be centrally regulated, or there should be a model regulation? And then we kind of figure out how this industry is to be regulated. Because when you look at most digital native businesses, whether it's gaming, whether it's lending, whether it's even Oyo, Uber, whatever, while physically the subjects may be very fragmented, there is no elegant way of regulating it digitally unless there is some amount of centrality in that. So what is that amount of centrality? How would states view that? So these are the 5 points that we are discussing in today's panel, and we have domain experts in each one of them. We start with Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. Is Jayesh online? Oh, he's not there, is it? Okay. So let's start with Tanmay in that case. Tanmay Bhargav is from KPMG. and he has a deck talking about what is the status of financial intelligence and money laundering and so on. Sure.